I watched the movie on release day for the first time since Justice League in 2017, so let's talk about it. Hello everybody, my name is Brandon. Welcome back to the channel. So I'm sure you guys already know, but Warner Brothers has decided to release all of their major theatrical releases on HBO Max the same day that they're available in theaters. So they did that at the end of 2020 with Wonder Woman 84, and now this past weekend was their second one to do this with, and this is The Little Things from 2021, written and directed by John Lee Hancock. So for the first time since Justice League back in 2017, I actually watched a movie the same day it was released. So that was really exciting for me, which I know you guys probably do that all the time, but as someone who hasn't been to the theater in years, I think since 2017, like this was a big deal. So I was really excited for this. I've been seeing previews for this movie on YouTube over the past few weeks here, and it looked like something that was just made for me. I, as you know, a big true crime junkie, and I love movies that kind of take that more realistic approach to their crime in their films, and this one looked to be that type of movie. So The Little Things kicks off with what is essentially a chase sequence. That is the opening number here. We have this girl who is driving down the road. A car approaches her really quickly out of nowhere and then rides next to her for a couple seconds and then eventually speeds off. She is freaking out. She eventually comes back onto the car and tries to, rush around that vehicle so that she can get away from the car. But the car picks up speed again, and then she basically pulls off the road at this bar gas station area and is trying to get some help because she is panicking at this point, and turns out rightfully so. So the vehicle that was chasing her gets out. We open up the trunk, and you can see what if you are a true crime person, what cops would call like a rape kit. At least that's kind of what it looked like to me in the trunk of the car. So you have like I don't know if there was a mask necessarily, but there was a hat, gloves, and just like rope, things like that in the trunk of the car. And then he is trying to get this girl, and that's where we kick things off. So right at the start here, I was really engaged because of course it just begs the question, like, what the heck is going on? And then that's when we meet our major players here. So much like the cast of Seven had 3 major players, so does The Little Things. And that's not going to be the only time I reference Seven in this review because, man oh man, that's what this movie wants to be. But we have Denzel Washington playing Deacon, who is not necessarily washed up, but he's older, nearing retirement most likely. He once was an investigator at one location, and then things happened. We don't know exactly. It kind of plays out through the course of the film, and he ends up taking this deputy role in a much smaller town. So it reminds me of like the movie Hostage, where Bruce Willis was like this hostage negotiator with like the FBI, I believe, at the very beginning, and then, or maybe not FBI, just like LAPD. But then something happens, and he takes on this like sheriff role in this small town because it's just going to be quieter. It's going to be easier for him. So that's a very similar vibe here. And then we also eventually meet Rami Malek's character, who is John Baxter. So Baxter is this college-educated, kind of young buck who is really taking the department by storm. And it just so happens he was basically the one that replaced Deacon's role, or his spot. So Deacon has to go up to his old hangout to pick up some evidence. And while he's there, things kind of happen a little bit, and he eventually gets pulled into with Baxter's case. And so they are going to basically work together to try to solve what is very clearly a serial killer in the area. And I believe this all takes place in LA. And if it's not LA, it's very close to it. But they do mention like the Night Stalker, which was there's actually a phenomenal docuseries on Netflix right now about Night Stalker. Absolutely recommend that. But so it was interesting seeing that reference after having just watched it. So that's why I believe it's also in LA. These characters eventually run into a character played by Jared Leto, who is just fantastically creepy and just slimy. Like his hair is super greasy the entire film, and it's done really, really well. Jared Leto, however you say that, does a fantastic job in this role. So The Little Things is really trying to sell itself off as a whodunit. That's really what I got from the trailers. And then frankly, for like the first, quarter, 40% of the film, that's still kind of what it felt like, is, who committed this crime and why? And are they going to figure out who this person is or not? But that's not really what this movie is about. Yes, that is a part of it, but really what we're dealing with here are these two characters who are very clearly flawed and could potentially be heading down the same destructive path. So it's very interesting to me to watch these characters kind of, I guess, like the degradation of these characters' psyches as the movie progresses. And then as Albert Sparma, who is Jared Leto's character, as his character plays more of a role in this and gets more prominent, it gets a lot more interesting, trying to figure out, is he genuine? Is he really slimeball like he looks? Like, what's going on with him? So that part is kind of like the whodunit or the mystery of the movie. But I think where the problem of this film comes in is that the majority of the audience, right? I feel like the main audience for this is not really going to care about the other stuff as much as someone who is a true crime junkie might. And so because of that, it might feel really slow to some that watch this. But if you're like me and, you do read true crime, you fancy yourself a good true crime novel, a docuseries every once in a while, then I think you'll probably get a bigger kick out of this than someone who doesn't like those type of things. While I wouldn't call this movie slow by any stretch, it is a bit longer, over 2 hours, and it definitely is a slower paced film. Now that said, I didn't feel it being slow. I wasn't looking at my watch ever, really. Like, I was engaged with what was going on. But others might not feel the same way because it is I know people don't necessarily like the word character study, but that's really what this felt like to me. We are learning about these characters. They start at one spot and then make a very clear path somewhere else throughout the film, and that's always interesting to me. I love watching characters progress or degress, whatever the case may be, in a film. Is that a word, degress? Degrade, whatever the correct term is there, but I love watching that in movies and in books, and I think that part of this film is done really well. It is inevitable that The Little Things will be compared to Seven because it is so blatantly obvious that Hancock, the director and writer here, is trying to do something very similar. Obviously, the story is different, the circumstances are different, the location is different, things like that. But you have your three major players here, two good guys, one bad guy, and all played by major stars like in Seven. I will say that this is a slower film than Seven is. It's not nearly the same level of I guess brutality or gore. It is a little more suggested here than shown, which is going to be good for some people, and others might find it a little boring. Don't get me wrong, there is some graphic scenes in this film. Obviously, you're dealing with a serial killer who goes after women. There's going to be very graphic scenes in that, but to me, I think Seven was just on a different level in terms of like the blood effects and the gore effects. But that's not what this movie's about at all. This is about these two investigators and where they are going, where they came from. Specifically with Deacon's character, with Denzel Washington, where he's coming from is basically something that we learn throughout the entire course of the film. So finding out is part of the climax of this movie, which the climax of this movie, again, I was just waiting for someone to yell, "Oh, what's in the box?" I just felt like that was coming. Now, that's not a spoiler by any stretch because it is a significantly different thing that goes on here. It's not nearly the same, but it just felt very similar to kind of those events. So I don't know. I completely understand where Hancock's coming from, wanting to make this kind of feel similar to Seven, because Seven is a masterpiece. That is a fantastic film. But this, unfortunately, just does not live up to that standard that was set by Seven. Now, it could also be that it's just not as shocking because we do have something like Seven and all of the films in between that and 2021 that we've seen, and so it couldn't possibly be as shocking or as revelatory as Seven was. That said, though, I still appreciate where it was going and what it was trying to do. But I feel like I'm going to be in the minority because it is not made for the same audience that Seven was made for. Though it is trying to sell itself as that and it's trying to look like that, it really isn't. This is a slower paced study of these characters and, again, where they came from and where they're going. That's really what this movie is about. That small whodunit in there is important and does help drive the motivations of these characters, but it's not the climax. Like, it's not why we're here at the end of the day. I will give credit where it's due. I really think that Hancock's directing style and his cinematography, like his eye for shots, is really well done. He's done a lot of movies, but I've never actually seen any of them, and they're all very different than this. And so it's very interesting to see him kind of break off into this crime genre, I guess, this crime thriller genre. But I think he has a good eye for filmmaking, and there are some shots in here that are kind of like non-traditional shots. We see at one point we have like Malik's character. We're kind of seeing his reaction reaction off of his reflection in a window, which obviously is not terribly unique or anything, but it's just non-traditional, I guess I'll say. There is a lot of use of reflection in this. Even the poster from at least the one on HBO Max it's a reflection. Like you have the two good guys on top and then the antagonist on the bottom. So very clearly, that is a theme of this film. It's from the start right through the end. That kind of reflection, that mirror image idea, that definitely plays a part. The other thing I'll say about Hancock is his writing style. He puts a great deal of faith in the audience to pay attention to every line that's happening, because there are some major plot points or ideas that are wrapped up in one quick line that frankly may have been stepped over a little bit by the other actor in the scene. So you have to really pay attention. So because of that, that also helped me stay engaged with this. Like, I needed to hear every single line that was being said, because there were different plot holes and different character motivations that I wasn't understanding. And so I figured, hey, if I pay attention, then maybe it'll be answered just in a quick line. But that said, there are still some questions I have, some holes I have that really, while it didn't completely take me out of it, it was a little bit distracting. And I think if you are not enjoying it as well as I did, then that'll really kind of annoy you, would be my guess, because there are just some big motivations. Like, frankly, the entire motivation for getting Deacon into this investigation is a little iffy to me. The motivation's not the right word, but just how he got into this, I guess, is a little bit iffy to me. But again, if you are liking the film, things like that you'll tend to just ignore and gloss over, like I was able to do. But some others, it's going to grind on you. And so that's another reason that I feel like this movie is just not going to be for everybody. And that takes me back to the conclusion of this film, because he was so reliant on the audience paying attention to these little things, these minor things as you go along. It was so disappointing that at the end, he basically comes and just smacks you across the face with the finale. I was so disappointed with that. Like, there was no subtlety to it at all. And I thought at one moment, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, like, if that's all they do, that's awesome ending. But they continue and do a little bit more, and it's like, oh man, like, you had something going here throughout the entire film, and then at the end you kind of just knock the audience in the face with the kind of how obvious things are, and it's like, man, that was a little bit disappointing. And obviously I'm being super vague because I'm not giving any spoilers, but just if you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Before I wrap up, I do want to mention that this is available on HBO Max in Dolby Vision and in Dolby Atmos. Now, I'll be completely honest, I did not notice the Dolby Atmos effect to this virtually at all, but some others might. If you have like a better system than I do, you might appreciate that a little bit more, but for me, I didn't notice it at all. That said, there was no problems with the sound at all. I heard the dialogue clearly, and it's important that you can hear the dialogue clearly, because again, there's like one-liners in there that if you miss it, then you might completely miss out why a character is doing the next thing he's doing. So it's important that you have that dialogue, and I didn't have any problem hearing that at all. I thought the mix was done well. And then the Dolby Vision itself, this was streaming, and I tend to, as most people would agree, like a 4K disc is always going to look better than a streaming in UHD or streaming in 4K. And I think that's the case here. While I think this looked good, I think once it comes out in 4K, it'll probably look even better. The Dolby Vision does a nice job of popping some of those colors, but it's a very muted film anyway. So while there are some like neon signs in there, or like bar signs, things like that you would notice, overall, I thought it was just a fine picture. It didn't stand out to me in any way. I think the dark scenes which most of this film is done in darkness, I thought they looked fine. I didn't have any problem picking up the detail in the black, so that's always a good thing. So nothing really to say too positively or negatively at all on the viewing experience in terms of the audio and the video quality, but I just wanted to throw that out there. That was my experience. Obviously, depending on your setup, your experience may vary. The Little Things is made for a very specific audience, and even being someone that I feel like I'm in that audience, I'm who this movie was made for. I love character dramas. I love slow-paced movies, as long as they're engaging with it, which this one was. And I'm a big true crime fan, which this feels like a true crime story. Even though I'm in that audience, I still didn't love this movie. So if you're not in that audience, if you don't like any one of those things, then you're probably going to like this one even less than I did. This is not really a whodunit. Yes, that's there. Yes, that, there is a conclusion to that, an arc to that. But this really is about the characters. The plot, or the through line for this rather, what drives this plot forward is the characters moving from point A to point Z at the end. And that's what keeps the movie moving forward. And it slows down quite a bit throughout. So just some things to keep in mind. Obviously, if this sounds like a movie that you might enjoy, definitely give it a shot. I don't want to turn anyone away from anything. But for me, I ended up giving this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. I thought it could have been better. It was trying to be something bigger, something like 7, and it just does not live up to those lofty expectations. So, like I said, I am giving The Little Things from 2021 3.5 out of 5 stars. Alright, so that is going to do it for today, guys. Let me know down in the comments below if you've seen this one. What did you think of it? Please keep things spoiler free so that we don't ruin it for others, or at least put it under like the See More tab. That way people won't get spoiled on this film. And let me know if you guys want to see more individual film reviews. One goal for the channel this year is to do a lot more of these types of things. 4K reviews, Blu-ray reviews, and just straight movie reviews if it happens to be something like this. So let me know some feedback down there. I love talking with you guys down in the comments, so please give me any feedback you might have. As always, if you guys did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing to Cinefessions here on YouTube, and if not, well, thanks for watching this one. I really do appreciate that. And like I always say, I don't just talk movies, I talk all things media, be it books, movies, video games, graphic novels, collectibles. If it's media related, I'm interested, and if you are too, you might consider subscribing. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for today. I just want to say thank you all so much for watching, and I want to encourage you to consume some media today. I'll catch you next time.